All right, and welcome back to the forecast card. Pretty solid day, 6-1. The only loss being naturally Pitt. That was maybe one of the most pathetic home games I've ever witnessed against a terrible Virginia team. I don't know what that game was, genuinely. I think they ended up losing this game by like 20 outright at home. And again, they are the number one home team in college basketball, so yeah, they're going to be running some laps in practice. That was a pretty terrible performance on both sides of the ball. Lehigh, pure domination. They end up winning this game by like 20 something. Pretty sweat free. Bethune Cookman, back and forth, but they end up covering somewhat comfortably. I think they win by about 10 or 11. New Orleans, they tried really hard to not cover this number. They were winning all game. And they were up by 10 with like 3 minutes left. They just barely allowed them to push it to overtime, where they end up being down, I think, 5 or 6 at some point, and then almost get sent to OT, but luckily it doesn't. So they end up covering, but I was going to be really upset if it didn't cover. And what Weber State, very similarly, dominated all game. I think we're up for like 17 at half, and then 12 at half, and then they almost lost outright. I think they were down by 1 with like 90 seconds left, and they managed to clutch up big time. So pretty nasty one. Morgan State, Delaware, the over was relatively free. Charleston, William & Mary under, on the other hand. Total finish at 165. They really were going crazy in the final 5 minutes. It felt pretty cozy for a bit, but luckily it cashes. Thank God William & Mary blew out Charleston, so there wasn't any like late game fouling or anything. So we take the 6-1 day. Anyway, let's keep rolling. All right, game number 1. We have Kentucky on the road against Ole Miss. Now, last night at 3.5, I thought this was a pretty fair line. But at 5, I think I'm going to give a shot on this pretty solid Kentucky team that's coming off a recent win against Tennessee. I think that they just have a pretty solid matchup here, and they've been playing much better at the road than Ole Miss has been playing at home. So when I look at the matchup, Kentucky, look at where they like to score, typically are a team that does really well on the boards, offensive boards, and that's somewhere where Ole Miss really struggles. They're ranked 170th. Kentucky's ranked 22nd and getting points off second chances, so I think they're going to find a lot of success there. And they kind of shoot everything pretty evenly. They shoot mostly threes in near basket, and both of those are places where they're going to have an advantage. So offensively, I don't see Kentucky struggling too much. I think they're also going to get to the line a lot more than Ole Miss will. On the defensive end, Ole Miss, they typically like to shoot everything as well, but they mostly shoot outside the paint, threes and mid-range shots. From 3, Kentucky's the 10th best team at defending it. And from mid-range, Ole Miss isn't really a good mid-range team anyway. They're ranked 185th, so I think Ole Miss is going to have to try to adapt and shoot more in the paint, because that's where Kentucky struggles to defend the most. And second chance opportunities, Ole Miss typically also finds some success there. They're going to struggle. And same with points off steals. Ole Miss is the 7th best team at converting points off steals, and Kentucky takes care of the ball. They're ranked 8th in limiting turnovers. So I think this is a good matchup for a pretty solid Kentucky team. They're still missing one of their key starters, but they beat Tennessee without him. I don't think Butler's going to be a big problem here. So I think Kentucky can maybe win this game outright, but I think they have a pretty good shot here to cover this +5 number. All right, game number 2, we have Western Michigan 10 on the road to play Ohio. Ohio is short, well, not really that short, but 9.5-point home favorites. Now, when I look at these two teams, this Ohio team is just so good at home. The last time I backed them, they played against Toledo, who unfortunately happens to also be one of the best road teams in college basketball, so kind of nullified the home edge a little bit. I think they ended up losing that game outright. I think I just had the money line for Ohio, but I think this is a good spot for an Ohio team that shoots the ball decently well. Western Michigan, not a fantastic defense team. They're ranked 282nd in defensive efficiency. I think Ohio is going to have a lot of success shooting and getting a lot of points off steals. On the other side, Western Michigan, they like to shoot mid-range mostly, and that's the thing. Ohio defends decently well. They're almost ranked 131st, almost top 100 in mid-range defense. And Western Michigan also likes to take near basket shots, which Ohio is almost a top 100 team at defending. So I don't think Western Michigan is going to find much success on the boards either. Ohio is a top 50 team at defending the boards and has played a harder schedule. I think everywhere where Western Michigan wants to score is they're going to struggle. The only success they may find is getting some free throws, but they don't shoot the free throw well. They're a sub 70% free throw shooting team. So I think this is a solid spot for Ohio to just run away with this game in front of their home crowd that they let down against Toledo. So give me Ohio here to run the pace and score up the score against Western Michigan. Game number 3, we have Oklahoma State heading on the road to play Houston. Now, I think this is just going to be way too big of a step up for this Oklahoma State team. They've been sticking around a lot in these Big 12 games, but this Houston team is another beast, especially when you look at where this Oklahoma State typically likes to score. They kind of rely on getting points off steals and shooting in the paint. And these are two things that Houston is ranked number 2 in college basketball in defending. They don't turn the ball over very much at all, and they are the second best team at defending the paint. So I think offensively, Oklahoma State is going to struggle. They're going to have to really fight to get free throws because that's the only thing that Houston kind of does is they play such aggressive defense that sometimes they do foul quite often, at least for a top 25 team standards. And on the other side of the ball, Oklahoma State, they aren't a fantastic defensive team. They're not even a top 100 defensive team. And Houston likes to shoot mostly mid-range shots, and they kind of dominate the boards as well. Those are two things that they're going to find a lot of success in. If they do decide to shoot threes, I just don't. This Oklahoma State doesn't defend anything well. They're not top 100 in anything. I think this is a huge mismatch against a Houston team that actually plays incredibly well at home and an Oklahoma State team that regresses a lot when they're playing on the road. I think this is going to be a 30-40 point blowout. All right, heading into game number 4, we have Kansas State on the road against Arizona State. So in my head, this is a absolutely perfect buy low spot on Arizona State and a buy high spot on Kansas State. Now, Kansas State is obviously coming off a crazy dominant win as 16-point underdogs against Iowa State. And obviously we just watched Iowa State get kind of crushed by Kansas. It seems like Iowa State's kind of in a rut, so I don't give them as much credit as I would if they beat them when they were playing really well. But I think this Arizona State team is a slightly better team than this Kansas State team, especially defensively. Now, Arizona State, they've been through the ringer. They played the third hardest schedule in college basketball, and they've been a pretty solid top 100 team all year. Kansas State, I don't think they've been more recently a top 100 team, but before then they really haven't been playing very well. I think they're going to struggle in this matchup. If you look at where Kansas State typically likes to score, they're kind of a near basket type team. They like to get second chance opportunities. Arizona State, they take care of the free throws or their own boards pretty well. They defend the near basket pretty well. They defend the three pretty well everywhere Kansas State typically likes to score. And I think Kansas State's only success here is going to be getting points off steals, but I think Arizona State has played such intense quality of teams that they're going to probably learn to take care of the ball. It seems to be where their biggest struggles are, is turning the ball over a lot. But at home, I think this is a good spot for them, where Kansas State typically gets a lot more turnovers on their own home court as well. On the other side, this Arizona State team, they like to shoot near basket and threes, very similar to Kansas State. But I think they're going to find a lot more success here, especially from three, where Kansas State really struggles to defend. They're like 277th in defending it. They do take care of the ball, but Arizona State hasn't really relied offensively on getting points off steals. They kind of just hook up a lot of threes. They'll find some success on the offensive boards. They'll find some success in the paint. I think this is just a good spot to back an Arizona State team, especially after Kansas State team just dominated one of the best teams in college basketball. So give me Arizona State here on the short 2.5 point home favorite spread. The final game here, we have Arizona heading on the road to play BYU. Now, do I think this BYU team is pretty good? Yeah, they're not bad, but I think this Arizona team is just a little bit too much of a step up for them. If you look at Arizona, they like to shoot in the paint. They like to force turnovers. Those are two things that I think they're going to find a lot of success in. And this BYU team, they're very inconsistent, especially with how they turn the ball over. And I think against a quality team like Arizona, they're going to turn the ball over a ton against an Arizona team that plays aggressively on defense. On the other side, BYU, they like to shoot up threes. Arizona's by no means a elite three-point defense team, but they're almost top 50. I think they may be able to limit their success there. Other than that, BYU doesn't really do anything well. When you're betting on BYU, you're just hoping that their threes are going to fall. And they do typically fall better at home, but if they're not falling, they're going to lose the game. I think Arizona is going to get a shit ton of free throws this game, a lot more than BYU will. And if BYU is not shooting at like a 40 to 50% 3-point clip, I think this game stays close enough for Arizona to cover, if not win outright on the +3 spread. All right, in terms of totals, there's 3 totals that I do like today. We have Marquette versus St. John's, under 148. Got this line on Pinnacle. I think this line's gotten a little bit too high against 2 teams that play extremely strong defense. Yeah, their offenses are good, but I think this line is just a little bit too high. It's a ranked 5th in defense versus a ranked 27th defense. Both teams are better defensively than they are offensively. I think Marquette's going to slow down the pace a little bit in this game. St. John's does play at a faster pace, but they actually have been slowing down a little more as of recently, especially against a Marquette team that kind of shows up a lot more defensively when they're playing on the road. It's kind of what they love to do, especially in the Big East Conference play. So I think this is a game where defense is going to be the difference maker, and these teams are going to really struggle. I think, especially with points off of steals, those typically lead to a lot more lengthened possessions, especially if you're not getting a free basket. All it is basically canceling out a shot attempt. So I really like that under at 148. Baylor versus Texas Tech. These 2 teams are pretty solid offensively, and defensively they've been okay, but they have been struggling a little bit more in conference play as of lately. This is a ranked 4th, but again, on paper, this is kind of the opposite of the Marquette versus St. John's. These are 2 teams that win through their offense. They're both borderline top 10 offenses, and defensively they're not, by any means, they're not bad defenses, but I think this is going to be a spot where both teams kind of dominate the paint on either side, get a lot of free points. Yeah, I just like the spot. Even though they're both very slow-paced teams, I think this total is a little bit too low for 2 teams that are going to find success shooting, especially Texas Tech from deep. So give me over 141.5 on that number. And USC versus Northwestern. These 2 teams, this is strictly a trend play. These 2 teams have been dominating the overs. I think Northwestern is 10-0 to the over in the last 10 games. I don't think that changes here against a UST team that has went over, especially when playing on the road. Defensively, these 2 teams are okay, but Northwestern is going to find all the success they want from mid-range and near basket, and USC is going to find a lot of success from 3. So I think this pace speeds up a little bit. Northwestern likes to play a slower game, but I think USC could theoretically be, to some degree, a better team here and might be able to dictate the pace, especially considering the fact that Northwestern hasn't played as well at home as USC has played on the road. So those are the 8 games that I'm going to be betting in college basketball today. If you have any questions or want any leans, you can check the spreadsheet below or just drop a comment and I'll be sure to get back to you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys tomorrow.